Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Chicago Bulls. They've been one of the stories of the NBA season so far. They're kind of balling out. They've got DeMar DeRozan, who's played like an MVP candidate up to this point in the season. They got a win today over the Indiana Pacers, which was a pretty big one. Not necessarily because, the Indiana Pacers are some top-tier opponent or anything like that, but because DeMar DeRozan hit an insane game winner, one-legged three right at the buzzer. A shot that when it happened, I was like, what is he doing? And then he drilled it, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's DeMar DeRozan. That's what he's been doing all season. Just a big win for them in that sense. And also because now, with that win, going into 2022, the Chicago Bulls are the first seed in the Eastern Conference. And that's not something I think anybody saw coming before the season. If you had asked people at this point, who would be the one seed? Some people would probably say the Nets, the Bucks would probably be your two main answers. Maybe some people would say like the Heat, maybe the Sixers would get a couple mentions. But all around, I don't think anybody would have said the Chicago Bulls. They have been phenomenal. And not only have they been phenomenal, but they've been doing it against a lot of odds. They dealt with a big COVID issue at the beginning of the season before most teams did, and yet they've still kind of pushed through that. They've had an injury to Patrick Williams, who is going to be out for most of, if not all of the season. They've been having to integrate a lot of brand new players, like I mentioned, DeMar DeRozan, new acquisition, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, some pretty big pieces to this team, and they've integrated them kind of seamlessly while also balancing Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic, adjusting to their new roles from last season, where they were by far the top two guys. Now Vucevic is a third option, Zach LaVine is a two option at some times, and despite all of that, the Chicago Bulls are on top of the East. It's been super impressive what they've done. And so as I'm watching this game and as I'm kind of thinking to myself, I decided to tweet out and ask y'all on Twitter if you thought the Chicago Bulls were a title contender. So I tweeted it out, and to be honest, I expected like 25% yes, 30% yes maybe, and then like 75 to like 60% no. Like I expected it to be like a 1/3, 2/3 kind of split from yes to no. And it's the exact opposite. 75% of people said yes, that the Bulls are contenders. Now, I don't know if that's just because DeMar DeRozan hit the game winner and people are super hype, whether a lot of Bulls fans are seeing my tweet. Either way, are the Bulls contenders? It's a question we have to ask because they are on top of the East. It's not like there's some like, fun 4 seed or something. They are leading the Eastern Conference right now. And it's been super impressive the way that they've been doing it. So I decided to make this video and talk about if I saw the Bulls as contenders and kind of what maybe they need to do to kind of up themselves a little bit in that Eastern Conference playoff picture. Now, when you look at the NBA, typically in the NBA, almost every year the team that wins has a superstar. It's kind of just a necessity in the modern NBA. In fact, even in the NBA going all the way back to its beginning. The teams that have always won the most are the teams with superstars. Now, for me, superstar, my definition, everyone has a different one. Some people think like top 15. Some people think like top 10, top 5. For me, it's probably around top 10-ish, I would say. Maybe even like 10 to 12. That's kind of what I see as a superstar. The top like 12 or 10 players in the NBA are superstars. And this Bulls team doesn't quite have one. You've got Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, who are both phenomenal talents. They're both incredible players. They're super clutch as well. Zach LaVine is one of the better scorers in the entire NBA. You've got DeMar DeRozan, who, after playing at kind of a near all-star level last season, has had a career resurgence in a big way, and now he's playing like an MVP candidate. I think he's been a top 10 player this season, but in terms of like actual, like if I had to rank my players like 1 through 12 or whatever, I'm not quite sure he would make that list, but he's been playing like a top 10 player. He's been playing like an MVP candidate. He's one of the most clutch players in the league, and he kind of just hoops. He's a baller. And so when you look at this team, even though they don't quite have a superstar, that you look at their roster construction with those two great players surrounded by a lot of really solid role players, including a third all-star in Nikola Vucevic, who, while he isn't quite playing up to the level that he's played in past seasons, he's kind of finding his groove now. He's one of the guys that I think has had to adjust the most because in Orlando, he wasn't just a guy, he was the guy in Orlando. He was like their star. And so now, over the past season and a half, he's had to go from being he had to go from a 1 option to a 2 option, now to a 3 option. So it's kind of a lot of learning for Nikola Vucevic. He's had to kind of develop a little bit on that end, and I think he's starting to find his groove a little bit now. And when he is in his groove, he's a great center for this team. You've got DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, who are super athletic and can attack the basket. You've got Nikola Vucevic, who can either get you a bucket down low or he can spot it for three pretty efficiently. You've got Lonzo Ball, who's a great playmaker for all of those guys, and he can hit his own shot from three. Alex Caruso, a good defender. So you've got two stars surrounded by a lot of great talent. And now they're the 1 seed, which, if you notice, sounds very similar to the Phoenix Suns. When I look at this Bulls team, I look over to the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns have Chris Paul and Devin Booker, two really good players, two clutch guys, including one who's a mid-range maestro, similar to DeMar DeRozan and Chris Paul, and they have a lot of great role players. Cam Payne, Jay Crowder. They've got a third star in DeAndre Ayton, who is their center, who plays a good role and fits their roster well, very similar to Nikola Vucevic, like I mentioned. They also have a great wing stopper in Mikal Bridges, which I think is the one piece that the Bulls are really missing, but I'll get to that in a second. They sound very similar in a lot of different ways. Now, are the Chicago Bulls as good as the Phoenix Suns? No, I don't think so. But they have a very similar mold. And the Phoenix Suns were a team that a lot of people counted out last season. Going into the playoffs, even going into the season, people kind of looked at that Phoenix Suns team and were like, what really can they be? And even going into the playoffs where they were the 2 seed, people thought they were going to get their butts kicked by the Lakers. They didn't. They went and they beat all their opponents up until the NBA Finals, where they lost in 6 games to the Milwaukee Bucks, who, given, did have a superstar. So while they didn't win the finals, they excelled and kind of crushed all expectations. So when I look at the Chicago Bulls team, I look to the Phoenix Suns as kind of a path for them to maybe make it to the NBA Finals. I see this Bulls team as a dark horse team to make it. They're not going to be the favorite. They just aren't. Even if they're the first seed going into the playoffs, there's just a lot of star power in the Eastern Conference. The Bucks and Nets mainly are very scary teams to face. For the Milwaukee Bucks, the reigning NBA champions, they're probably the team. If I had to pick some team to come out of the East today, I might say the Milwaukee Bucks. Of course, Giannis Antetokounmpo, a top 1, 2, 3, whatever player in the NBA, a dominant force offensively and defensively. Drew Holiday, they got Dante DiVincenzo back, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez is going to come back at some point. They've got Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis. They're just such a deep team surrounding their superstar and supporting stars. They're just a really tough team to beat all around. And so while the Chicago Bulls team is really good, I would pick the Milwaukee Bucks over them. But that doesn't mean I don't think there is a path to them beating them. When you look at the Brooklyn Nets, probably the biggest question mark for the Brooklyn Nets, if they went up in the Bulls in a series, is Kyrie Irving back? There's plans to have him play as kind of a part-time player on the road, but how does that look for the playoffs? If he's there for the playoffs, is he only playing road games? And that's another really weird thing that we could talk about. How does that really affect things? So, the biggest issue for me with the Chicago Bulls, I think they're very talented, and I think they have two great stars and two great clutch players, which is super critical for the playoffs. My worry is those two guys, Giannis and Kevin Durant. Because right now on this Bulls roster, I really don't see anybody that can stop those guys. And that was a big problem for the Phoenix Suns. They've got Mikal Bridges, but while he's a great defender, it's Giannis Antetokounmpo. How do you stop him? And you really can't. DeAndre Ayton is a great center and he's good defensively, but it just wasn't enough to stop him. And so while the Suns as a whole are a great team, they lacked the superstar to beat that squad and they just couldn't stop Giannis. That's kind of what I look at with the Chicago Bulls. I think there is a path to them making it to the finals. They're the 1 seed right now, almost halfway through the season. They are a team that can make it to the finals. That's just true. The question is, what is their path to get there? And to me, a trade that this Bulls team needs to very greatly consider is I think they need to go get Jeremy Grant. The more that I look at this Bulls team and the more that I look at Jeremy Grant's skill set, I think he's perfect for this Bulls roster. If they go out and add Jeremy Grant, that adds a whole nother level to this team, because right now their 4 spot is pretty weak. No Patrick Williams for probably the rest of the season. Javonte Green is starting. While he's a solid piece, he's not the guy you want as your 4. If they're able to go out and maybe they do trade like a Patrick Williams and plus some salary filler for a Jeremy Grant, things become very scary quickly, because then they're rolling out a lineup of Lonzo, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Jeremy Grant, and Nikola Vucevic. That's an incredibly talented starting 5. That's 4 all-stars in their starting 5. if you count Jeremy Grant, who's right there as an all-star caliber player when he's healthy. And hell, even Lonzo Ball in the future could be an all-star at some point. And even though he isn't, he's a really solid supporting guard. So that's a super talented team, and that gives you the guy that, like, it's impossible to stop Giannis and KD, but it gives you a guy who can try and go at them. Because right now on their roster, they really don't have that guy. So right now, if you ask me if the Bulls are contenders, I think it's right there. They're right on that cusp. They are I would say they're dark horse contenders if I had to give them a title. I think they're behind Brooklyn. I think they're behind Milwaukee, but they're right there at that 3 spot. You could talk about the Miami Heat, but they're not healthy, and I haven't seen them fully healthy, so I can't truly judge them. You could talk about the Sixers, maybe if Ben Simmons starts showing up, but who knows if that's going to happen. Out west, you have the Phoenix Suns, the Utah Jazz, you have the Golden State Warriors as probably the top teams. So I would say the Bulls are probably right now in my top 5-6 teams in the NBA that I could see winning a title, which is crazy to say after their last season, after this crazy offseason, and where they at now. I think that's fair to say. I think there are some moves they need to make. Maybe they could go out and get some more depth, get some better pieces off the bench. Maybe they could go get like a Larry Nance Jr. from the Portland Trailblazers. I think he could be a solid piece for this team. Either way, I like what the Bulls are doing right now. I think they're playing some really good basketball. There are some moves I think they need to make because this is a special team. I think the Bulls need to capitalize and go in on this now and do their best while the NBA kind of seems wide open at the moment. You've got those great teams, but the Nets are always kind of a mystery with the Kyrie Irving thing. Out west, there's no like super teams right now. We'll see what happens when Klay Thompson comes back, but there's no really insanely dominant forces in the NBA outside of maybe like the Bucks. And even then, they've been kind of back and forth on health-wise. Things are up in the air in the NBA. The Bulls need to capitalize. I think they need to go get a guy like a Jeremy Grant, go all in, and if they get a Jeremy Grant, I think that firmly puts them in the contender tier. So for right now, I think they're dark horses. Let me know what you think about the Chicago Bulls. Do you think they're a contender? Do you think that they could beat a Milwaukee or a Brooklyn in a series? Let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate y'all watching. Thank you for all the support over the course of this year. This is the last day of my daily upload streak, so I'm not sure if I'll upload tomorrow or not. Might take a break. We'll see. But I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.